Hey everyone, this is Jennifer Beamer, owner-operator of Expertly Dyed Art by Science, and in this tutorial video I'm going to show you how to take this and turn it into a skein of yarn where you don't need to use external ties. Now, if you are an avid Expertly Dyed fan, you will know that in an old episode, linked up here, I already went into how to make a skein of yarn and use a length of the existing yarn to then create ties for the same skein. And at the time I was describing this as a way, if you were wanting to sell your hand spun, then you could just keep everything part of the whole rather than cutting a bit of the hand spun to then use as the ties. It also makes it kind of extends the total length so that you don't have to worry about sacrificing some of that hand spun, and you can then send that on to your client or the buyer. But what's nice about it is if you're in a pinch, you don't have any ties, well, how do you tie the skein together without sacrificing extra yarn? So because I've had a lot of people ask this question, or I've seen other makers where they use external ties, I thought maybe I would make a dedicated video for that. So in the next part of the video, I will show you once this has been put on here. So I thought I would show you how I take this yarn off of my supported spindle, because when you're putting yarn onto a niddy-noddy, the method in which you're putting it on does alter the twist a little bit. So one of the things that I like in particular about my supported spindle is I don't have any issues with the whirl getting in the way. Now, if you are a top whirl spindler like I usually am, you'll know what I'm talking about. I have a tendency to put all of the yarn on the middle of the shaft, and then I don't really have, and I also usually spin quite a lot before I'm willing to take it off. So there's not usually a lot of room for my hand to grip. So I always find that first bit really challenging. Welcome back. I have successfully taken all of the yarn off, and this is also what the spindle looks like. I will be doing a review daily vlog about this one of those retro expertly dyed videos. And then I will go more in depth about supported spindling in the future, but this will make another appearance. So I've taken all of the yarn off and put it on my niddy noddy, and normally what you would do is you would have your starting thread here, and you would have your end thread, and you would tie them together, and then you would get separate ties to then create the figure 8 knots, so that when you pull this off your niddy noddy or off a chair or whatever, that the yarn stays organized and doesn't become a jumbled mess. Now this is applied yarn, so that would less likely be the case. However, if you were using handspun, singles, lace weight, you can see how that would be really not a good idea. So figure 8 ties help keep your skein orderly. Now, how do I actually go about doing this? Well, I think I'm gonna need an extra pair of hands. So normally I would tie these two ends together, and then you could get your figure 8 ties elsewhere. But if we want this to be all one and the same, what we do is, this is my starting thread, and this is my ending thread. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to undo the ending thread, and then turn the niddy noddy away from me, so that I know that the starting thread is on the opposite side. So from here, you're going to take the end of the thread that has the knot, and then we're just going to split this either into 3 or maybe 4 bundles. Okay? And then, just as in weaving, we're going to go under, over, under, over, wrap around, and then weave backwards. So under, over, under, over. Okay? Now, when you're pulling this through, you might be tempted to just pull all the way. However, if we hold on to the bit of yarn that's attached to the skein, and you feed it under that, you're going to have a little juncture right at this point, so that when you want to undo the skein, it will be easy to do so. And I'll show you here what I mean. Like this. So, because I have caught this thread, then when I continue wrapping, I'll be able to find this point and undo all of these figure 8 ties. And then I just circle it around the bottom, and I do the same on the other side. So divide, I like to do 4 sections, especially if I have bigger skeins. It just helps keep it better organized than doing 3 or 4, or sorry, rather than just 2 or 3 sections. So I always start under, over, all the way around, back, under, over, over. And remember to go underneath that yarn as you've pulled it up around the rest of the skein. Then you pull that. You want a little bit of space here, but you just need to bear in mind that this will take up extra yardage if you make this really loose, and it also might, you might risk getting it disorganized if it's too loose. If you're dyeing, make sure that this is roomy enough so that the dye can penetrate into these areas, and then you just continue. uh-oh, you can see how I have not quite enough to make it all the way around and through. But fear not, we will find a solution and be right back. Okay, so normally you would probably take back an extra length, but what I wanted to do in this part of the video, since I knew I wasn't going to have enough, was to show you how to add in an extension so that you don't have to sacrifice your hand spun. So you literally just tie a spare yarn onto the end like this. Now I'm just using this undyed Ryland because it was a similar gauge, and I used this for packaging up parcels from expertly dyed, so I was fine just using this as waste yarn. But what I could do now is kind of gauge about how much more I'm at least going to need to finish wrapping this, and then cut it and continue wrapping as I was doing before. If you are selling this hand spun and presentation is key, make sure that you take into consideration how much leeway you're going to need, and that's going to be contingent on how much yarn you already have on your nitty knotty, how much you have left, and honestly, experience. So you will just learn about how much you need. Okay, so we've still caught this outside yarn to make sure that we don't lose that as part of the tie, and then I'll go around the bottom, do this last one. This is a 2-yard nitty knotty, and I generally prefer to do 4 of these knots, or sorry, these figure 8s. Oh, goodness. And so in this last one you can really see how this works, where this yarn is part of the main part of the skein, and then I've formed the figure 8 tie, right? And then I just tie this to the end. Now I want to use as much of the hand spun as possible, so keep it as long as I can. And there we go. When we take it off, it's all nice and organized. And there you have it, a finished skein without any extra ties. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already, and thank you so much for watching. Any comments, questions, please put that in the comments, and if you want to see a new tutorial video, all you have to do is ask. Bye!